But anyway, my clients requested don't bring your personal device as your work device. Set up a burner, put only the minimal stuff on there. And I obliged. And it's quite funny because when I told this to my Chinese contacts, right, that we met, some of them are, very successful international business people. And they all like looked at me like, huh? Why? They're like, I seriously never heard of this, right? Like Jen in Hong Kong, she's like, Lovis, there's budgets for surveillance. And I'm sorry, man, but you just don't even register on the radar. And I'm like, I mean, I know, obviously, right? Like, why?
Before we dive in, a quick whisper about today's sponsor, Ghost Founder. You know that moment when an idea jumps from someday to why not today? Ghost Founder lives in that moment. Ghost Founder takes the sketch from your napkin, gives it a heartbeat, and walks it out into the world. Fast. While everyone else is still writing pitch decks, the ghosts are wiring prototypes, lining up seed investors, and tuning your ops. Product market fit isn't just a hope, it's an outcome. If you're the kind of renegade who refuses to wait for permission, visit ghostfounder.com. Because around here, we scope things, build things, and fund things, in that order. Ghost Founder, the quiet engine behind loud breakthroughs.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the cover call. Me and Lovis, we look a bit jet lagged because we just got back from a whirlwind trip. We've called it the Middle Kingdom Expedition. So we spent, 12 days on the ground, 2 days traveling back and forth from Europe to China. And I think we visited 7 or 8 cities. Maybe Lovis visited one more than I did in that 12-day period. So we just thought that we would capture some of our thoughts while they were still fresh. Yeah, and thought we'd share our recap with you guys. So Lovis, welcome back. How are you feeling?
Thanks, man. Well, after spending 14 days with you day and night, and now we're no longer in the same place, I miss you.
It's weird, right? Same. I told you when I got back.
But but I also I'll be ready to book the next trip to China anytime.
All right. So overall positive, right?
Yeah, very positive.
I'm just super happy because I've been telling you about China for 8 years now, non-stop. So it's so good now to finally be able to share that experience with you firsthand, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I had been to China once in 2017, but like I said before, I kind of did it all wrong. Didn't know what I was getting into, was not prepared, didn't have really. It was part of a much larger trip where my wife and I did a trip around the world, and we just wanted to go, but we didn't really prepare for it at all. So, and then in 2017, I think a lot of the apps that now were extremely useful didn't really exist yet, or at least they weren't accessible to foreigners.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice, but didn't feel at all the same like this trip.
So just for the audience, right? Why did we decide to do the trip, or what was the motivation for you anyway?
Yeah, so I mean, for those that have followed along in our journey with different podcast guests, this China topic has really emerged quite organically, right? We were not really trying to push in that direction, I don't think. But we connected with some interesting people like Louis, LVG for short, because it's easier to say. And then, of course, Jen Ju, Scott. And but even before that, guys like Trader Ferg, who gave us like a pretty, maybe not on the episode, but around that time, he published like a pretty long expose on like what opportunities he sees investing in Chinese stocks. And so I don't know, man, it was just like a lot of small things at first that got bigger and bigger in my mind and my perception. And I was like, man, I really need to see that I get some firsthand knowledge, right? Because right now I felt like a bystander who was like aware but couldn't really speak with authority on any of it. And then, of course, the most blatantly, I should say, in the best way, Peter Alexander drove home all the points, right? So we had him on twice, and the first time was already incredible. It was more general, and then I think the last episode we posted was him, talking a lot about what's happening right now, right, with the trade war and tariffs and etc. And it just after these conversations, LVG, Jen, Peter Alexander, every time afterwards, my gut feeling was, you just have to go. I just have to go see it. LVG said, oh, there's two kinds of people: those who think that people who say positive things about China are Communist Party shells, and those who've been and seen it.
Said in a way that only LVG can, right?
I don't know if I would say it in such absolute terms, but my experience, in large part thanks to you, because you speak the language fluently and you've been there so many times, and you gave me so many cues on kind of, what certain things mean in context, and like what culturally behavior, like how to behave, just make it a bit smoother. Like, no, not big things, but just small things, like when you meet people, the gift giving, right? We came super prepared with gifts for each of the amazing people we sat down with and had a lunch with or dinner with. And that's just something you do, and it's very nice. I mean, in Europe, if you're invited to a house party, you're also supposed to bring like a bottle of wine or something, right? Not supposed to come empty-handed, but it is much more pronounced, I think, in China. It's really part of the thing you do, So,
Yeah.
but if you don't know, then those are all like small traps you can walk into, right?
Yeah. I think something like that, like with gift giving, if you didn't bring a gift, it wouldn't be faux pas, like it wouldn't stop anything, but you'd sort of lose an opportunity to connect on another level, right? Like talk about the gift. If it's a bottle of wine, maybe have the wine together. We brought some cigars. Those were pretty well accepted, and we could smoke one or two together.
Yeah, I thought that was also really cool. Like the hosts, right? They're hosting us. We're bringing a gift, and they like, oh, cool. They open it right away and say, here, you want? It's really emphasizes the wanting to experience something fun or something enjoyable together, right?
Yeah. So overall, you're glad you went, I guess.
Yeah, I'm extremely glad. I mean, the trip was insane, right? We just to recap, right? We landed on the 3rd in the morning, 3rd of July in the morning in Shenzhen, stayed at this super nice hotel in a good location. First impression that I had was, how is Shenzhen, which I envisioned as like this, wasteland just full of factories, right? And like smokestacks and just like bare concrete. That's what I envisioned in my mind. Like, very productive and innovative, but I didn't expect it to be
Like maybe
pretty.
brutalist even, right?
Yeah.
Just pure efficiency.
But actually we're like, it's like a really wide street, traffic on two sides and separated in the middle by this massive trail with green trees, shrubs, like beautifully done. People jogging, riding bikes recreationally. Everything is whisper quiet because everybody's on e-scooters, and most of the cars, like in Shenzhen, I would say probably 80% of the cars are electric, so you don't hear a thing. And it struck. I was like, who built this? It's very thoughtful. Like it's well done, and it's friendly. It's at least that, I'm not saying the whole city is like that, but at first impression, I was like, wow, it was incredibly nice. The hotel we stayed at was, luxury, and downstairs coffee shop. Right, you get a single origin espresso that's is a coffee shop won like awards there in Shenzhen or even in Guangdong region. I forget, one of the top 5 baristas, and you get that shot of espresso for $2, and it's incredible. And so we got there, right? First impression was like, whoa, this is way different than what I expected. But then, bam, 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 right? Next day, Hong Kong. Then from Hong Kong to Shanghai to Ningbo, then Nanjing, Suzhou. I did a 24-hour solo adventure in Hangzhou.
Yeah.
Went back to Suzhou, link up with Jay, and then rode the business class high-speed rail from Suzhou all the way to Shenzhen, which was like a 9-hour, 10-hour trip. But it was, thanks to business class, very enjoyable. And then even around Shenzhen area, right? We went to Songshan and Foshan and Guangzhou, and then back to Shenzhen. So how many cities was that? That was like 10 cities, I think.
Yeah, lost count.
Yeah.
But Yeah, that's a good way to fight jet lag, right? Just go to a different city every 24 hours. You've got so much to see, so many people to talk to.
Yeah.
No time to be tired.
No, we really didn't. And the incredible thing was, right, one of my suppliers was one of the first guys that we met up with, and it immediately turned into a very friendly. It's like, hey, it's like, oh, I didn't know you guys had to leave so soon. Like, if you couldn't come back on, on the second leg of your trip, like, hit me up. Happy to take you to dinner. And like, we immediately made a connection. And the cool thing is that it wasn't transactional at all, right? It was more like there was a lot of luck involved, I would say, that we even met the owner of the company, because we were originally just scheduled to meet with this like head of sales guy who was also incredibly nice. But then one thing leads to another. We meet with him, talk for an hour, and then get the invite to come back. And I'm so glad we did, because that turned into like the most intimate, like almost like family dinner type thing that we were invited to, right? And I've maybe spent a couple of $1,000s with the supplier, like it's nothing major at all. And actually, they told me in so many words with my small orders, they probably ended up paying me, because it's sort of like, oh yeah, like, yeah, we have this order minimum, but we don't really make money on that stuff. But we're always happy to build a relationship. And I'm like, well, clearly you are, because you just had your good friend's wife make me dinner. But I don't know, it was just really, it felt really special. And of course, the language barrier normally, I think, is massive, right? So I don't want to downplay that at all. And I feel incredibly lucky to have you there with me, right? I think there's virtually no way this would have worked any other way, right? But of course I did, because I got so excited. I did start doing like a conversation audio course 2-3 weeks before I went, and it did help. I did get some little bits and pieces, and I kept learning a little while I was there, and I've already taken like 2 more lessons since I've returned. Third one scheduled today. So I'm very, it's like Mandarin is like so interesting, because it throws everything I know about language like out the window. It's like, nah, grammar, don't worry about it. Like, you just put the words generally in the right place, we'll be fine. And
Yeah. Imagine trying to describe to a Chinese person what conjugation means. It's like, what?
yeah, they're all like, why do you guys do this? They're like, English is so hard. And I'm like, it's really not that hard. But I guess from like Chinese perspective, I'm like, oh yeah, it's pretty hard.
Yeah.
But then German, of course, is even worse. You got so many. I think you have more exceptions in German than you have rules, right? Anyway, it's well, then very practically, right? I just got done with my morning workout, and I stepped on the scale. And Jay, you know how much we ate, right? And drank. I
Non-stop.
lost I lost weight, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, we walked around a lot, but it's not like it wasn't that much, because we could taxi and metro everywhere and use the trains and everything.
Yeah.
So I think just also the style in which the meals work, right? Where you basically load up on protein, and you maybe eat a bowl of rice if you're still hungry.
Yeah.
We
rarely did though, right? We rarely did.
we rarely did. It was really cool. Also unexpected, because I really, really like Asian food, and I go, even if I'm in Germany or if I'm in the US, I seek it out and eat it a lot, but it's still very, very different. Yeah. So why did we go, right? I wanted firsthand knowledge. But I have lived abroad, right? I grew up in Germany, but I did go to uni in America, and I spent quite a bit of time there working. And of course, my current business is there as well. My wife is American, and there's been periods over the last, 15 years, where Europeans feel different about America. Sometimes positive, sometimes negative, and then so I was like, well, Lovis, what do you think? You're there, and then my inside is usually quite different than theirs. They're like, no, that can't be right. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm just the one who lives there, so don't mind me. Um, so I have had that experience many times, that there's a huge gap between media narrative, political narratives, and motivations, and what you actually perceive when you're there. But of course, it's also so multifaceted, right? Because when I'm in Texas, going about my day, like, I've stopped watching the news, like TV news, many, many, many years ago, right? Like, it's just not something that I have time for and that I'm interested in. And why not? Because I don't feel it adds any value to my life. It
Yeah.
doesn't give me more time with my kids, right? That's like a super high priority. It doesn't make me more money, which is another high priority. It doesn't make me healthier or happier. So like I just don't do it, right?
It's almost detrimental, right? Sometimes you find that after a 15-minute dose, your next 2 hours is you're not optimized for the next part of your day. You know.
Of course not. If you guys just load up on fear of World War III and nuclear strikes and I don't know what, or during the pandemic, I thought it was unbearable to watch even for 5 minutes because just the fear you just eats you up. But then you always like, wait a second, I'm still okay. Like nothing changed. I just watched this program, but it's really like messing with me, right? So not saying anything about the motivations behind that, or like I really don't care. I just opt out.
But how interesting was it in China though that politics so rarely was like I think it was almost never a topic, right?
I
Like
mean,
almost never. Like sometimes people asked you like, "Hey, what do you think about this and that?" But it was never the. It was always like a side note, you know.
yeah. So to be fair, nowhere do I experience that the political debate is as in your face as in Germany, where even during family dinner, somehow the Germans find it important to bring that up. It's kind of like you talk about the weather, the food that's on the table, and politics. Like that's about get there pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's raining, the food's great, and also who'd you vote for? you know,
Yeah.
quite normal. And then what I found in the US is that, at least in Texas, a lot of people have this attitude of saying, the less politics, the better. More or less, they all have their selfish interest in mind, to say it politely. At the end of the day, everybody knows they have to take care of themselves I think on a base level.
Yeah.
And so, I perceive America as one of these mega countries, superpowers, right? And then you and I have both traveled to Russia, right? Recreation, as tourists, right? And I had a very similar perception that people are also like, yeah, these guys, you try to order a certain menu item and they're just like, yeah, we can't have it. It's sanctioned right now. And the people just like eye roll, like, but it affects them, but it's not, of course, like such a big deal. But it's just like, ugh, these politicians, they cause nothing but trouble, kind of an attitude. So I find that very similar between the U.S. and Russia. And then in China, actually, also found it very similar. They're like, yeah, well, and somebody actually specifically said, like, hey, there is, of course, the party, right? There's politics. But the thing that moves and that connects Chinese is our identity is very strong. Like we're Chinese first. We consider ourselves like I don't know, maybe family is too much, but like very much a strong, cohesive community. And politics is separate from that, right?
Hmm.
So they, I for at least, and I mean, that's how it was expressed to me. I need more data points, but that computes, because that's kind of what I've perceived in many of these mega countries, that they're like, of course there's politics and of course they do things, and sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree. We've heard many critical things, by the way, but I said, yeah, no, they really screwed it up. I wish they would do it differently. So lots of dissent, right? Nobody's scared to voice their opinion. Actually, I would say compared to the average European, they can speak a lot more freely. And I but I really felt that this human connection matters the most, and politics is something separate from that. So I think that's good. That's how it ought to be, and I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I think nobody was trying to put anybody in a box, trying to find out how they should label each other, etc. Right? It was more
No,
like trying to
no, and
find common ground always. You know, like
yeah, and of
remember
course,
that night with the home cooked meal, we were basically just sitting there talking a lot about philosophy. The guy Anke was even talking about how Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, Christianity, there's so many universal truths they all share and stuff like that, right? These
yeah, I
things are
thought,
concepts that are thousands of years old. They're not political in any way, right?
yeah, and I think the average Chinese person is not terribly religious. There are, of course, you know, there's Christians, there's Muslims, there's all kinds, but it doesn't seem to play as high of a role as, for example, in the US. But there also was like, yeah, if you want to be Christian, like go for it.
Yeah.
You believe what you want to believe. But it's not for me, very like, and I witnessed that exchange and they were like, I think that's great. Right. Because being religious freedom, I think, is important. I think people should be free to believe what makes sense to them. Right. And, you choose what works for you, in a sense. I always think it gets a bit annoying when people start trying to evangelize. Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like that was the case at all. But I've experienced it many times in the US.
Yeah.
And I don't like it particularly.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of has their own journey,
Yeah, so I guess, overall very open society in terms of ideas and beliefs and not very judgmental, right? But very, very motivated for things like business and relationships, I feel. So they're looking really all the time on how to deepen relationships and what that might mean for their own lives, knowing somebody from the other side of the world. For them, that's so exciting, right?
Yeah, I thought, a couple of impressions I had, many of them had contact with Germans, and they pretty quickly told me, it's like, oh, but you're quite different. It's like, yeah, German, good, but like, you're different. And I was like, yeah, nice. I am different, right? I have done many things outside of Germany, and I try to keep the best parts, the being very diligent and hardworking and dependable. I try to keep those qualities without all the dogma, let's say, and because it's just part of me. And I thought it was cool that they seemed to recognize it pretty quick. So they're not putting you in a box, right? It was much more. They were trying to figure out, who's this guy.
Yeah. Just for the record, Lovis basically ate everything that was thrown at him, so that endeared him to the local population pretty quickly.
Well, and I can handle my chopsticks quite well, that's a low bar, I think. But there was some peanuts came out, and I was like chucking peanuts in my mouth using chopsticks, and they were like, "Whoa, you can do nuts with chopsticks. That's impressive." And I'm like, "Yeah, I try."
Soon he was juggling like some chicken's feet with chopsticks, so that was also impressive.
Chicken feet twice. I've had it before in the US. It tastes fine. I don't love all the bones, but the one that we had that was boneless actually was quite good.
Yeah. And I think what also was a big difference for Lovis was that he could already speak some basic words or phrases, right? Like he could ask a lady where the toilet was, and he could say thank you, stuff like that, right? That really throws them off guard.
They don't actually. So the crazy thing is that when I walk up to them and ask for the bathroom, right, they do not expect me to speak the words, and so actually they don't. I have to like say it 2-3 times. So they're like, "Wait, what? Oh, wait, you're trying to speak Mandarin, right?" They're like, "Oh, it's right there," but because they don't expect those words to come out of my mouth, so they're just like, "Huh?" So it does. So then I don't know. Did I say it wrong, or is it just that they're just perplexed? And I think it's a mix of both. I probably didn't say it just right, but they also just did not expect that to come. So it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I had a ball of a time watching them react in surprise to Lovis in so many different ways, right? And also, for those that haven't met Lovis face to face, he's a pretty tall guy, right? Well built. He's walking down the street in China. He's obviously just already towering over most people. So they're already looking at him. And then when he spits out a word or two in Chinese, they almost fall over.
Yeah, there was definitely some funny moments. Yeah. I had a couple of curious ladies asking my marital status, and it's very cute.
Straight up, like, hey, how was the fish? By the way, do you have a girlfriend?
That's funny.
Yeah, and Lovis would show them his wedding band, and they would all show very openly how disappointed they were.
Seriously, that one lady then stood like at the back wall of the restaurant, just looked over at me this whole time, like, she was like gutted, and I'm like, what did you expect? This restaurant is called Sauna Chicken. It's delicious, but like, I wasn't prepared today to find a wife.
Soulmate.
You know, I
Yeah.
already have one, and I love her a lot. So, very funny.
And another thing, right, with all the bookings that were done, so Lovis actually took care of nearly everything, like all the train tickets, all the hotels. Like I sort of asked him, hey, do you want to do it? Because, you know, you can do it through the Alipay app. Sometimes it comes out in Chinese. You have to wait for the auto translate to work. Do you want to do it or should I? And Lovis took the challenge. And basically for that whole 12 days, he was doing everything. He was looking at train schedules. He was booking the train tickets. He was booking the hotels, booking the taxis to go from point A to point B. So yeah, for me it was awesome to see, because I used to struggle with it before Alipay was open to foreigners. Like, because I never had a Chinese mobile number, I could never get access to all those online payments, and so I always had to rely on my friends or my colleagues to book me stuff. But this time here I was seeing Lovis on his second trip ever, right, handling the whole thing like a local. So that's really good, I think, for anyone on the fence whether or not to visit China, maybe for the second time, because the first time was so hard. It's really different now.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was another really interesting episode, right? So I told my US based clients that I was going to go on this trip, and they said, "Oh, absolutely, you should. It's super fun. Please don't bring your work computer and your work phone, because, you know." So just as a background, right? We develop products. My company does basically R&D and product development, and so there's a IP that we're developing, and from a Western perspective, China is quite well known for copying stuff, right? Now, when you're in the West, you're like, oh, of course, that's what they do. When you're in the East, they're like, it's more seen, I think, as a compliment, right? If you see something you like, you try to be as good as it. But so as far as legal things go, you know, I leave that up to the lawyers. But anyway, my clients requested don't bring your personal device as your work device. Set up a burner, put only the minimal stuff on there. And I obliged. And it's quite funny because when I told this to my Chinese contacts, right, that we met, some of them are, you know, very successful international business people. And they all like looked at me like, huh? Why? They're like, I seriously never heard of this, right? Like Jen in Hong Kong, she's like, Lovis, you know, there's budgets for surveillance. And I'm sorry, man, but you just don't even register on the radar. And I'm like, I mean, I know, obviously, right? Like, why? And some other guy also, like, like the German guy, right, that we met, he was like, nah, like that's. And even I asked you, right, Jay? Well, what was Wave Labs' policy, because they sent you to China like 40, 50 times, and he's like, nothing, no policy. But somehow in corporate America, there's like if you for a bigger company, very intense info security. And I of course I have zero knowledge or evidence if that's, maybe that was in the past, maybe that's still going on, but maybe you have to be, like, if you are in a Fortune 500 company executive thing, maybe then it's different, right? So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying my experience. You know, I set up my old phone that's been in the drawer for 2 years. Put Alipay on that, WeChat, just like my super basic Gmail email account. That's it, like nothing. And so the nicest part first, because of this, I also wasn't able to keep tabs on my company, on my daily, weekly calls, nothing, right? So this was actually the most unplugged I've been from work in like a decade. I could just purely focus on what was going on there, and then of course would keep in touch with my kids and my wife, but that's pretty much it. So now my project manager, of course, knew how to reach me, and we would chat 2-3 times a week, but it was very light. I was like, hey, how are things going? Everybody happy? He's like, yep, all right, sounds good. So if you need an excuse to unplug for a week or two, tell everybody how bad the infosec is in China, and you just go unplug, right? It can be our little secret that I don't think there's a threat, unless you're doing really stupid stuff of like clicking on Chinese symbols that you don't understand. But like the internet is a treacherous place, right? I can show you like a couple of hundred English speaking websites that if you do click around on certain things, your computer is going to struggle. Your company might get ransomware. All these things are out on the internet. and it's just up to you to not be an idiot. That's kind of how I see it. Of course, one of my employees says like, no man, it's real. Like my company was like held, like his previous employer was like held hostage and stuff. And I know that these things happen, so I'm not trying to downplay those. But there's probably more happening than somebody just going into the country with a personal device. There has to be more, right? Android or iPhone systems are built pretty securely. Nobody's going to ransomware you if you didn't somehow do something stupid, I think. Like if you brought back a USB stick and plugged it into your computer in the local network, or something very preventable. The only thing I didn't do, I never charge my phone on a USB port. I always use my own charger or power bank, right? That's it. And then I stayed on mobile data the whole time because, but you said that the Wi-Fi was bad anyway, most of the places. So I like sum it up. I would definitely be okay to bring my personal phone next time. I would just again use my own charger and just use mobile data, and I think then you're good. But yeah, as far as the navigation of it all goes, it is a small learning curve. Alipay app works well. It's a bit slow. Using a US carrier SIM card, communicating with the Chinese servers, of course, is slow. Trying to pull up my own company website in China is very slow, right? That's just how it is. But it works really well, and it's incredibly convenient. You have this QR code. You can then select which credit card you've entered. You can basically pay via Alipay with any of your credit cards, no problem. All these mini apps are there for trip.com, for example, where you can then do trains or hotels and
even local flights.
Yeah. And it works really easily. You put in your guest info once. They always want your passport number. And if once you have that, then the next time you just select who's going, these two, and book and pay, check out, boom, bam, super easy. Trip.com is kind of like Booking.com. Booking.com would also work, but there's no Alipay integration, right? So many options. I was super surprised how many incredible hotel options there are. I mean, there's Western. I would say the majority of I don't know actually. Who knows? Maybe there's just as many that are Chinese, a little bit lower standard. But we only stayed at 4 and 5 star hotels, and it was usually for about $100 a night average. And in any city, large or small, you can find these very good deals in good locations. And very often there are Western brands, right? There might be a Fairmont or Marriott or a Best Western or Meridian or Shangri-La or Steigenberger, right? All the big brands are there. And actually, while we're on that topic, I was actually I don't know, I guess maybe I forgot, or maybe it wasn't quite the same last time I was in Shanghai. But there's Starbucks on every corner, just like in the US. There's McDonald's everywhere. There's KFC. They really like KFC everywhere. Domino's Pizza, which I'm like, why? Because it's not that good. And so many Western brands all over the place, and people go. They're not empty, right? The people use it. People like it. Very present in everyday life. And I guess like the Luckin or Lukin coffees, the Chinese coffee shop brands, they are also coming up strong, and actually kind of the coffee's better than Starbucks, which is, to be honest, is not very hard. If you're purists like us, we just like to drink espresso, then Starbucks is not your first place. If you, of course, wanted triple mocha caramel latte with whipped cream on top, then I think Starbucks is great. But the curious thing about those was, Jay, right? In the Chinese coffee shops, we had a super hard time ordering because they have like no more sales counter. You have to order on the app, right?
Yeah.
In Shanghai, somehow it still worked, but everywhere, like in Shenzhen, like no chance, right? The only way we could then order the coffee is by basically having the lady behind the counter place the order from her personal phone, and we just passed her some cash.
Yeah. It felt like we were doing drug deals, but we just wanted an espresso.
Yeah, so that's pretty funny. We asked somebody, like, no, it's so inefficient. We don't want a line there. You just place your order, you walk in, you take your coffee off the counter, and you go. And I was like, I get it. It's very efficient, but it also kills the whole, let's sit in a nice coffee shop and people watch or read or write or work. It's not as prevalent, right?
But it's
Um,
very, it was almost like a big juxtaposition, right? Because remember when you first arrived, one of the things you said was like,
mm,
wow, this place, they really care about things like beauty and style,
yeah,
right? And maybe you can go into what made you say that. But the point is, a cafe would be somewhere you would think people would choose as a way to express their love for beauty and style, right? But
yeah.
then to see them make it into this hyper efficient fulfillment center almost,
Hmm.
it just was funny for us to see. So, yeah,
Yeah,
so what
well,
made you
so
say it was a place where people cared about beauty and style?
so the first night, right, we had to stay up to battle um, jet lag, and not at all because we wanted to go to a bar. And we found this place, right, that was probably one of the most stylish, like aesthetically done bars, or I don't know what you call that. A bar is like not cutting it quite, but it's like a luxury lounge or something. One of the nicest places I've seen in a long time. Very like nice, like old school, like antique furnitures, candles everywhere. Like they had these candelabras who were just covered in wax, right? Because they put the candles on, let the wax just strip down, and when it's done, they just put a new candle on. So like they've been doing this for years because the wax is like has like a mind of its own. And behind the bar, shelves full of the finest whiskeys that I've ever seen, like for the abundance of like completely insane. And then you order a cocktail, they give you a little snack or like a fruit platter with it. You can also get cigars there, and they're all set up for that. It's hard to say, but like, each drink arrives in its proper glass, right? Like they would never serve you a beer in a glass that's not a beer glass, right? Or champagne and not a champagne flute. So like this might seem basic to some who are listening, because this is also the case in Europe. People pay a lot of attention to that stuff, but in the US, for example, really not. You know, the most expensive beers you'll have are at a sports stadium, and you drink them out of a plastic cup, right? And that beer is like $18. So it's very different. And of course, comparing a football stadium to a nice luxury bar is not fair. But what I mean with that is the care and the effort that goes into making something nice, enjoyable, and aesthetically pleasing is like to the max. And it's not just based on this one place that we went to, right? We kept seeing that um, for especially stuff that it's not chains, right? These are usually then individually owned, or they have couple of owners. They put a lot of effort into making it something special, and they also train their staff incredibly well, where they also do this relationship building, right? They come over, they say hi, they're like, "Oh, so good to see you guys again." Like when we came the second time, they recognized us somehow. And I think it's genuine on some level, where they're like, "Oh, Lovis and Jason definitely stand out walking around in Shenzhen." So I do think they genuinely recognize us. But of course, I also think it's also good business, right? Building these relationships is very smart. If they can come get us to come back a third, fourth time, if we make this a regular place, they don't know if we're there in town forever or just visiting. It's a very good business practice. And I was telling you, Jay, about I think the strategy that makes Hooters or places like that so successful in the US is that guys will go, and of course, the girls look very attractive, but they're also very sweet. They're very nice to you. They make you feel special. They make you feel welcome. And I think guys will go back because of that. And they're like, "Oh, and the food's good." But the food's good everywhere. So would you rather go to the place where there's also some nice person who looks nice serving you? Well, of course. And I think the Chinese is incredibly savvy business wise. So of course they also do the same. It just turns out that in this particular case, they didn't need to wear exposing clothes. It was, but just the kindness and the connection is like, "Oh, can I get your WeChat?" And like then you're texting, but it's like, "Oh, look, we have this event tomorrow. Are you guys here?" They're just, I mean, it's a lot of effort they put in, but they do it with a smile, because they know, like, worst case, I just get this guy's contact. Best case, we become friends, and somewhere in between, it's good for business anyway, right? So I don't know. I thought it's, and seen this over and over again, where it was very, very much common behavior slash maybe strategy, which but I enjoy it a lot because I think it opens the doors to so many encounters and so many opportunities.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and I think because it happened so universally, nearly in every restaurant, every cafe, whether it was a local restaurant, whether it was a cocktail bar,
Yeah.
the people working there were always warm, right? They were always glad to be able to be hospitable. So I think it's just a cultural thing. And it's
Yeah.
the same with the people we met, right? They showed us only the most, I don't know, high level of hospitality, right? And like you said so yourself, your supplier, you were a very small customer, and here they were driving us to bus stations, making sure we get on the right bus to Hong Kong, taking time aside to have dinner with us on a Saturday night,
Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah. And even,
home cooked dinner on a Saturday night, right?
yeah, like you said, drive us to the bus station, or even, in Foshan, right? Jimmy drove us 45 minutes to like the historic downtown in the city.
Yeah,
And we're like, hey man, we can totally take a cab if you're busy. He's like, no, 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 no way, I'll take you.
yeah,
Like insist to go out of their way to help you out, right? So
yeah,
like I felt it was very respectful and very, like, I think it comes from a very good place, right? Very, I honestly, it makes me think like, well, I need to do a lot better about this myself in my own life. Need to
yeah,
be, I try to always be helpful to people, but I think you can really do more, right? Because I think it matters a lot.
yeah, yeah. Agree. So, what do we take away from this expedition? You think it met our objectives for sure?
Yeah, I mean, what objective did we have? I wanted to gain first-hand knowledge, and my whole thing is I wasn't going to sightsee, right? I was really going to try to make some connections with people, because from all my travels and from my also moving to the US before, I've learned that that's the main thing. I've had the experience where then family members, after I was in Dallas for 2 years or so, they come and they say, "Why do you like this place? There's a lot of concrete. It's super hot. Like, don't you miss the Alps? Don't you miss, all these things?" And I'm like, then it's like, well, now that you say it, you're right. Like, it's not naturally, there's no natural beauty here in that sense. But I don't even see it, because I just think in terms of who do I know and how do the people that I meet with make me feel. And that was always incredibly positive for me.
Right.
And so it's just something that I've learned. Maybe, I don't know. I have no idea if this is obvious or not. It doesn't seem to be obvious to most people. I think if you make one or two deep connections in a new place, I think that can really be a life changer in terms of getting to know the place and how it works, right? If you then ever have to come back or want to come back, there's somebody there that in 5 minutes, they can solve a dozen problems that you didn't even know you had, right? Sometimes because they're local and they know how it works and you just don't, right? And so I've experienced that so many times. And so really, I'm not planning on relocating there or anything, but I'm definitely thinking about identifying some interesting business opportunities. But so that means for sure I'll come back, and I'll come back, bring my kids and my wife at some point, right? And so if there's no way, like if we had not met nothing but like, why are you guys here? You're wasting your time. If it would have been very negative, then that would have helped clarify this a lot. And I would have been like, you know what, this trip was good, but now I know it's not for me.
Hmm.
But the opposite is the case, right? I feel like the people were incredibly welcoming, and they verbatim said to me like, come back often. We want you here. We want to do cool stuff with you, right? Very open. I felt like the Chinese economy, from what I've observed, right, didn't do any studies, obviously, but from what I've observed, restaurants were full, malls were full, streets were bustling. I think their economy is doing fine. I think it used to do better, let's say. And crazy thing is, there's zero expats there right now, right? There's almost no foreigners. We could go in a whole day, maybe seeing two or three other European looking people or Americans. Of course, if you go to an airport, you'll see some just walking around Shanghai. I mean, outside of this one night where we saw these like French or Italian guys at the neighboring table, that was the only time where we really had like a bigger group of like 4 or 5 people who weren't locals, right?
Yeah, yeah, agreed.
So
For me,
that,
was weird too. Like, it's
yeah.
the
And
least I've ever
so
seen.
And so also a German guy who lives there, he's like, yeah. And also American, Peter Alexander, he's like, yeah, no, all the expats are gone. Like it started during COVID, and then with this trade war now, they're all like, no, we're out of here. So it's quite interesting because I think in many ways the opportunities now to collaborate with Chinese suppliers is actually better than ever. And this is somehow the time when the world decides to try to leverage it less. That sounds like an opportunity to me, but but of course I don't know. So, but I want to pull on that thread with you, right? So see what happens. Objective was to see real China and meet some people, and absolutely like over like exceeded all expectations I could have possibly had. If I had even the imagination to, I don't even have enough imagination to expect or hope for a trip as good as this.
Yeah, it really was pretty spectacular. I mean, I've been there quite a few times, and even for me, it was a very enjoyable trip, man. So, thank you very much for saying that you wanted to go, and I'm really glad that we did it. So we'll keep in time to come whatever we learn, and in our endeavors, we'll try and share it, right, and hopefully allow some insights. Because for me, anyway, I feel like it's quite insane that there's such a big economy that where the people there culturally are relatively open, right? To see that they're so often misunderstood by such a large extent. It's interesting for me. So anything we can do to bridge that would also be pretty fun for me, I think. Add a lot of value.
Yeah, so like we said, or like Jen told us, let the bridge be the result of what we do, right?
Yeah.
So to me, there's 5-6 ideas that we can pursue, and we'll just see what works. And the interesting thing is, right, the attitude of what I've perceived from some very successful Chinese guys, they said they wish they wish that Chinese leadership would be more humble. There's no point in rubbing in anybody's face that China's actually doing quite well. Just they were like, we're doing good, but we could be doing so much better, right? And I think that's such a good attitude. It's like, why, what's the point? Why do you need to tell people how great we are, right? Like this attitude a bit that the US has where they're just like strutting around. It's like, oh, we're the greatest and everybody needs us. And I'm like, yeah, that might be absolutely the case, but what's really to be gained by rubbing that in someone's face? It's not I don't think it's a very constructive thing to do.
Yeah.
And to hear, and I would have expected them to say this about the US, but they actually said it about their own country. And I was like, wow. So they're very critical actually about how China is perceived in the world, and they wished it was better, and they want to do things to help make it better, right?
Yeah.
So that's really cool. So what Jason and I unfortunately are really bad about posting small snippets regularly. We have, of course, probably 400 or 5 or maybe more, maybe 1,000 photos and videos that we collected along the way. And I think what we'll do is we'll post notes and on Substack, Twitter, maybe even Red Note about this trip as we go along, right? And just maybe we can do a couple of these where we just jump on one city and kind of see what we experienced. Or
sure.
there's so much more to be said, right? Go so much deeper. But I think for now we're home safe and sound, and we had a good time. Mission accomplished.
Yeah. And you need to get ready to go on your next trip, so better leave you be for now. Thanks for making the time. We just thought it would be good to catch our impressions while they were still fresh.
100%. And I'll be stuck for a while if all things go to plan. Can't travel, but I will emerge from that hiatus in 2026, and there will definitely be more interesting expeditions.